I really wanted to respect the industrial loft architecture of the space, and I always really do believe that the architecture should inform the interiors, and although you can have your own style, it should marry the two. My name is Lea Cojot, and my firm is Cojot Designs. I started it 3 years ago. I think people come to me for an elegant but still playful design, mixing vintage and contemporary. Some color, not maximalist though, and I think my spaces, although playful, still feel pretty neutral. I wouldn't actually call industrial my design language at all, so I think that's something I really had to think about, is how can I make my style fit this architecture and have the two meld together. People typically hire me because I have a hospitality background, and now people want their homes to feel like hotels, kind of. So this crossover of my experience is what a lot of my clients are looking for. So I first worked at Rockwell Group right out of college, and I think it was such a great place to start because it's a big firm and you just learn the right way to do things. I worked on a lot of Tao Group projects and Vedanta in Mexico, which are these like resorts. Each one is so concept driven that it can get you designing in a specific way. And after that, I went to Soho House. We were doing all the in-house design for the new Soho houses and refreshes of the old Soho houses. I did the Toronto house refresh, meatpacking. I worked on Mexico City, which opened kind of recently. Working in hospitality really prepared me for residential because it's much more fast-paced and it's really budget conscious, which I think residential designers are less aware of. So I think a lot of my clients like that I'm able to be creative and getting that higher end look for a medium price. So today we are in my loft in New York City in the Flatiron area, and I did a gut renovation on it 2.5 years ago. My husband and I, we got married this summer. We've been living here for 1.5 years, basically. So when I first bought the apartment, it looked totally different. It hadn't been touched in 40 years. Because it's an industrial old weaving building, there was this weird floating kitchen in the middle with a wash closet, these interior bedrooms. So although it was, a big open space, we had to redo everything. I knew this space was for us because I really loved, you could still feel the energy. I think that's the cool part of living in New York City, is getting character in your buildings. Like these original columns that were there, the freight elevator, having all this space in New York is really special. Hi, welcome, come in. So here's our foyer, efficient, functional space. We have a big coat closet with little benches. One limitation was they had to be narrow enough to fit when the door swings open. And then I already owned this vintage Milo Bachmann piece, which is really cool with the mirror and the rosewood. Here we have an Andy Warhol and this pendant I really love, with some vintage and vacation finds. Lisbon is really known for their ceramics, and I brought this bowl back from there. It's chestnut, which is super cute, and I paired it with this vintage candelabra I got in Hudson. So in our great room, we have 8 windows here, 2 more in the bedroom, all on one wall, which played obviously a big role into how we designed the floor plan. As I mentioned, this is a total gut renovation. We started from scratch, which was great. We even moved our front door, which used to be in our bedroom, around to be able to make our master suite behind me. So in the bedroom, we kept the design pretty simple. I think it's nice to have a really serene, clean room that you can quiet your mind at night. We have this Ling Rosé, kind of cream colored upholstered bed. I got this custom made lumber, really large pillow made. I think it looks so much sleeker than having a bunch of different throw pillows, and nobody at the time at least was making some wide enough for a king bed to really go from like edge to edge. I did this Nordic knots rug, which I really love, and pulling in that ochre color that I kind of use in the guest bathroom too. It's a favorite in this vintage chair as well. Here we did more window treatments. We have a sheer that's nice when you're just getting dressed during the day, and then a blackout. And over here I have this piece of art that I really love. This artist pushes the paper through and it creates this really cool texture, but it's tone on tone, so it's still super serene. This is a light fixture that I designed for one of my projects at Soho House that then went into production at Soho Home. So it's a nice reminder of, where I've come from. We picked these 60s inspired nightstands. Again, just super functional with drawers. I think that's always really nice. And then these really soft nightstand lamps. I think in a bedroom, you always want to diffuse the light. You should always have a shade. So here we have the fabric shade. Here we have the orange glass shade that really just softens the light. Our bed is from Ling Rosé, and it's kind of hugging you. Just super cozy and comfortable. It's got this textural white fabric, so the texture adds a design element without being too loud. Felt appropriate for bedroom art to be this Dream Catcher by Suyu. She is Asian but lives in France and does all of these origami pieces of art that are really interesting. Although I think the bedroom reads really neutral, we are still pulling in this ochre color as our pop. I love this fabric. I did a custom upholstery on this vintage chair, and then the poof is nice. You can put your feet up or just more places to add, your laundry when you've finished folding it or whatever. The language of the chair actually really spoke to the bed because the headboard's kind of hugging you, and here the seat's kind of hugging you. So they're kind of speaking the same language. And then I just really fell in love with this fabric with the rug, which I had chosen pretty early on for this room. And here we did the frame TV, which was actually really important because of the chandelier. The matte screen doesn't reflect off of it, so it works really well in here. So in here I used one of my favorite lighting designers. He's based in Murano. It's called Sogni, and this cage around the blown glass felt like this marriage of traditional and industrial, which I've been working on for the entire apartment. I once again picked a super veiny and movemented marble for the countertops, and this wall tile, which is a Zalige, but the color almost feels like cement, which I thought tied in this industrial design into our more detailed designed bathroom. I also use these Roburn medicine cabinets that I really love. If you apply makeup, it's nice to have light shining right at your face, and they offer 2700 Kelvin lighting instead of 3000, so it's nice and warm and glowy instead of making you look sick. And then I designed this big custom shower door. It was kind of inspired by the Gloss Italia modular doors. We have a fluted glass, a frosted glass, and a seated glass at the top, all with this metal frame. I think as we've been talking about the whole way through, budget is always a concern, and so instead of doing custom millwork, which typically you would do for this, I got these drawers off the shelf from Rejuvenation and just made the custom countertop for it. This vanity is really high-low. The way we were able to get this big punchy design is through this beautiful stone, but then we just bought these simple wall-mounted off-the-shelf drawers. I love having this little decorative vintage chair I got off First Dibs in the corner. It's nice to just be able to put your clothes down when you're going into the shower, and I think it adds warmth to an entirely tiled space. In our living room, as I mentioned, I love mixing vintage and contemporary, high and low. I found this insane sectional by Preview. It's really big, and we needed a really big sectional for the space. I like that because it's not an L, more people can see when hosting. We found the sectional pretty early on, actually, into our design process. I typically wouldn't really gravitate towards a leather sectional, but it was a nice color and in really good condition, so we decided to keep it. We paired it with, this is also a vintage find, this coffee table I bought in the Hudson warehouse. It was a fiberglass base with a mirror top, and I later reupholstered the base and had this marble top made for it, which really like elevated it. So it's kind of custom, kind of vintage. So I chose this Restoration Hardware rug because of its thick braiding, and I think all this texture really offsets the smooth leather of the sectional really well. And although they're similar colors, they're kind of juxtaposed texturally. So here we have India Madhavi side tables. She's one of my favorite designers. So I grew up in Paris, and I literally bought them at the shop in Paris and shipped them over. She's done such cool projects, and she really knows how to artfully bring color into projects. I paired it with this Jim Thompson flame stitch-esque quilted fabric that I did a COM on a Lawson Fenning chaise. This is a vase by Anissa Kermerich, a Portuguese designer. She does all these cute little votives and objects that look like other objects. I really don't think design should be too serious, and I love being playful with it and having, you know, the materiality and the scale of having objects recreated as others, I think is always really fun. I'm really lucky. My mom works in the art world, and she connects me with all these cool younger artists, and in this loft space we have all these big giant walls, so you need big giant art. Offsets our big TV on this side, which was a non-negotiable for my husband who loves to watch sports. We only agreed on the 85-inch if it were a frame TV. I like the frame TV because honestly, when the art is on, it looks pretty good. The matte non-glare screen is great, and it just kind of disappears. Because all the windows are on one wall, making it a 2-bedroom, it would have eaten into a lot of the living room space, so we decided to make our guest bedroom an interior bedroom. Here's our guest bedroom. Has everything you need, a closet, a bathroom. We went with this really simple Gervasoni bed. We really didn't want the footprint to be too overwhelming in the smaller bedroom. The art behind the bed is Julien Colombier. My mom actually represents him. She has a gallery in Paris. You'll see we have another piece of his down the hallway, but this is one of his prints. I think the diptych works really well over the bed, almost creating like an elevated headboard. Here are little stools I actually designed while at Soho House. They're actually still the mock-ups from when we were making samples with different vendors. Soho House typically does 30% custom, 30% off the shelf, and 30% vintage for all of their projects. And then Soho Home will collaborate with us on the custom stuff for what they think is sellable. And they'll pick like 10 items per project to manufacture in their store. We actually put in this window because it's an interior bedroom, which makes it actually a legal bedroom for resale, which is pretty important. So here we're in the bathroom. I really wanted to brighten up this interior bedroom with some color. I love this Ansax tile. It's got this really pretty crackle texture to it. And I think it's exactly what I was talking about earlier about being industrial while still being warm, and this color is so nice and glowy. This is a Benjamin Moore paint color. I chose it to match the tile. I think it's turmeric. And then the stone, like I was saying, we really pulled this color and brought in a secondary color. The faucets and shower head, all the plumbing fixtures in here are from Rejuvenation. And then the Gerby wall-mounted toilet, I think everyone's doing that, but that's really space-saving and just looks sleek. This is a kind of typical standard size bathroom, so we didn't want to go too big with anything, but still add a big punch of design. And I love stone, so throughout you'll see I chose some really punchy stones. I just love the bright colors in here since we're in an interior bathroom. One of the first things I was thinking about when designing this apartment was the kitchen. I wanted to keep the loft feeling and really keep this great room all open. You could see the living room, dining room, kitchen, they're all one room. So that's what led me to treat the island really as a sculpture, because from every angle you can see it. So this is really the center of our great room. It's all anchored around this column. When designing the kitchen, the column was obviously a big component. We couldn't move it, and so we had to think about how to integrate the island into the column. This is 8 slabs of stone, including the back counter and backsplash. They brought everything pre-cut and then installed it all together on site, which really was super impressive to see how all the puzzle pieces came together. We routed out these little outlets on the counter because otherwise, per code, you'd have to add outlets to the outside. And that was to avoid putting outlets on the outside of our beautiful sculpture. Because stone is a natural material, you can really allow yourself to take riskier choices, especially with color, because natural never goes out of style. So it's a great opportunity to infuse some color and then use that to inform the rest of your design. Let's keep going. Another little trick we did to hide some outlets is we had the back plates painted to match the marble veining, and it really is pretty convincing. So you may notice we don't have a traditional stovetop with a plate. It's totally integrated into the stone, and we just have the holes for the burners cut directly through the stone. So I was the first one that I kind of tried it out on. I was a little bit nervous about the heat with the stone and how that would interact, but it's been no problem at all. Super convenient. I love the look of it. I think it's super sleek and continues with this theme of mixing traditional and modern. I never used to cook, and in COVID I got really into cooking, so I was actually thinking about a really functional kitchen. We have all Wolf Sub-Zero oven, microwave, fridge, a Miele hood. Hoods are always so ugly, so we built a box out to try to hide it the best we could while still keeping it functional. You want kind of a triangle between your fridge, your sink, and your stovetop with a counter space in middle, so it's easy to grab from here and then bring to there. So just keeping, although this like very design-focused space, super functional. So because we chose a ton of movement on the stone, we wanted to do a simpler kitchen and cabinet, really pick a neutral color with very little detailing on it, recessed finger pulls. I like when kitchens go floor to ceiling and then just counter height. I don't think we're not really doing uppers anymore. The cabinets are reformed. I think they look super sleek, they're durable, and they've worked really well for us. So I think when designing, you're always making compromises, and because we chose to invest more in the stone, we decided to save more on the cabinets, but in some projects it makes more sense to do the opposite. So in our dining room, we have some really classic design, the Noguchi big round pendant. I knew in this big open space I wanted to repeat two larger pendants over the living area and the dining area that were matching or almost matching. And then we did the Noel Sarin dining table and these larger upholstered comfortable dining chairs. Noguchi is a super iconic mid-century designer. He is from California and Japan. So he, I think, really got popular because he brought Asian design to the US. And these kind of traditional Japanese lanterns that give off this really glowy warm light are quite simple, but super effective. I love using them. But my husband, when I showed them to him online, he was like, IKEA makes these, right? And so he didn't want to get them. And I was like, no, they're special. Noguchi's a real designer. And we went together to his museum in Queens. And it's such a special little building with all his sculptures and light sculptures. And he calls these light sculptures. And that really sold him on it. And unlike IKEA, the light that comes out is gold and warm and has this like handmade feel. So this is a really iconic mid-century design as well, called the Sarin table by Noel. I really like using it because the table base kind of just disappears, and so you just get this flat surface that's quite sleek, and the whole thing just feels kind of neutral, and you're able to take risk and make some more noise other places. Every piece in a room can't be a star. Maybe I don't want to call it not a star. It's nice to pick some sleeker, more neutral choices to let other pieces shine more. As we were designing this space, we really wanted to keep the open loft feeling, but as an interior designer, we always have so many samples and materials that part of having my desk out in the open and having it look neat enough to have out in the open, I built out all the storage behind our kitchen to hide away all of our samples. This just seems like the perfect little nook that was already here. I have natural light, and it's a little more tucked away while still keeping that open floor plan. So this is a Kimiko photo that she did for Cartier. Kind of her signature is painting herself to match the background color and having jewelry or other pieces, elements really pop. As I was saying earlier, my design is kind of neutral while still adding color, and I think overall it's not overwhelming, but you do get these pops of blues in the art, and in these bigger spaces you really need to get larger art or it feels a little cheap to not take over a wall. This is an old weaving factory. We still have the original, or the cab has probably changed, but we have the freight elevator, which was super convenient for construction. It opens up on the sidewalk and then directly into the apartment. That's how we got everything in and out of here for our renovation. This room is really long and we needed to break it up into sections. The plants really help create almost a visual faux wall so that it's less overwhelming and it doesn't just look like a sea of furniture. We added this little seating group just to create more sections in the room and keep that cozy feeling. This rug is a collaboration between designers that I need to look up the name of and Schumacher. They made these really cool rugs that are honestly like pieces of art themselves. And because this area is a little bit lower traffic, but still high visibility, we were able to use it to kind of anchor these two armchairs. To be a good designer, you have to mix high and low. Everybody has a budget, including myself, and every single client. It's easy-ish to design beautiful spaces with unlimited budgets. Here we use crate and barrel chairs that I think are great. They're super heavy, they feel really nice. They're designed by Jake Arnold. Really, because we like to host parties, this is a great in-between space of when we're trickling from dessert to drinks and people are going to the sofa. It doesn't get used that much day to day. It's more of a visual barrier, and it brings you from the higher seating height and kind of carries you through the lounge area, which I think is important to do as well. I would describe this loft as super comfortable, although still, like I said, industrial. And I think that's what I was really striving for. The open space is super fun to host. I love to host and have dinner parties, and it's just super livable.